This is The Locker Room, where the coaches of Husson University talk sports.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Alex Nivus, and this is The Locker Room, the show that brings you closer to the Husson coaches and athletes. Our guests today are both Husson basketball coaches. My first guest is Warren Caruso, head coach of the men's team. Coach, thank you for joining me this morning.
No problem. Pleasure to be here.
Your team has dealt with a lot of roster changes, both, of course, in the offseason with seniors graduating and even in season as well. What was the biggest challenge you faced as a coach this season?
I think the big challenge we face is the youthfulness of our roster. We've in our rotation we've had 3 to 4 freshmen playing every game, and I think we've had some learning moments, and other times they've played very well. So I think at this point in time, all those guys that are young that have played are beyond their freshman year, and we're ready to go heading into the playoffs.
You touched on youthfulness. What's the biggest difference between coaching an experienced team like you had last year versus an inexperienced team like the one this year?
Well, I think probably the biggest thing is the details. Like a veteran team understands all the details of preparation and a practice and getting ready to go on the road and our game preparation, whereas a young team, it's all new to them and it's all done at a higher level. And I think the other thing that really gets them is a year ago, most of these kids were playing 30 minutes of a 32-minute high school game, and now they're playing 10 to 15 minutes off the bench, and they're playing a different role and a different understanding of what's expected of them. So there's a lot of adjustments, just like the transition of being a high school student to a college student. It's very similar. So you add all those things together, sometimes it can be difficult for a young student athlete.
Every year over winter break, the team goes on a trip somewhere. This year, the team went to Las Vegas at the end of December. How does a trip like that affect team chemistry?
Well, we believe it builds team chemistry. You go on the road and you stay with each other for an extended period of time, and you eat together and you practice, and you try to do some things. And, while we were there, we went to a UNLV game together, and so you have all that additional time spent, and then the opportunity to compete outside of our region against, in this case, 2 very high caliber teams. It was a great trip for us.
You talk about the win on that trip against 16th ranked Scranton. How did that boost your team's confidence?
I think our team had a lot of confidence going into the game, and that's probably why we were successful, because they believed they were going to win. And I think in the long run, those things help us now and be able to go back to that level of play that we played at against Scranton and Hampton-Sydney, and then last week against Bowdoin, and draw on that experience to hopefully prepare us into the postseason.
Your team suffered a heartbreaking loss this past weekend to Thomas. How do you refocus your team going into the NAC tournament?
Well, we look at it as a different season. I mean, at this point, everyone's 0-0. It's in some cases it's 3 or 2 games between you and a championship, and we need to draw on all the experiences that we've had throughout the year, the good and the bad, and we've had some difficult moments, particularly at home. I think we're happy to be on the road. We're 6-5 at home and 13-1 on the road, and for whatever reason, we just didn't get it done on an everyday basis when we played at home. And so I think the focus will be there just because of the magnitude of the moment. Knowing that if you lose, your season can be over.
You touched on the struggles at home this season. Why do you think your team has struggled on your home court this year? What do you think that's about?
Well, I think it comes back to our youth. I think it comes back to our preparation and the idea that, look, we got to prepare every day. We got to know what's expected of us. And I think there's a great comfort level of playing at home, and too much of a comfort level. And you add that idea of a target on our heads where we got to be nationally ranked in early January. We were playing very well and had 1 loss. And we had a lot of people coming at us and really giving us their best effort. And we didn't always respond well. And again, I think you go back to that youthfulness of just that understanding of what it takes to win.
We've talked obviously a lot about youthfulness, because that was a big factor this season. Who are some of the younger players that maybe some people don't know about that you see playing a big role on the team, like for the rest of this year and next year and beyond? Well,
certainly Mitch Wisher's played a big role as a freshman, coming in as a transfer at UMaine. He comes in a little bit older, a little more prepared. He's done a good job in understanding his role. He was a volume scorer in high school, and now he's a bit of a role player and a spot shooter for us. But he's done a really good job on the defensive end of the floor. I think Connor Adams has progressed tremendously, and even getting some starts at the midpoint of the year. Really understands what we want from him, and and is improving his game every day. I think Jordan Holmes has a bright future for us. Even though he didn't play a lot, he did get some opportunities to play, so we saw how he reacted. And David Diaz has had a real solid first year as well. So we're really pleased with that group that's given us some real quality minutes.
Can you talk about Josiah Hartley and his transition from football to basketball, and especially where he wasn't able to join your team until roughly 5 games into the season? So how was his transition? What's that like for him?
Well, we're really proud of Josiah. He's done a great job in transitioning, not having really played basketball in 3 years, and transition from football season into basketball season. We had to take some time to bring him along, both physically and mentally, to get him in basketball shape, and then as well as understanding the system. And to his credit, he did a great job. And really, in mid-January, we had him in the rotation a little bit and gave him some opportunities, and he performed well in some games. And now at this point in time of the season, we've really shortened the rotation of the guys that have been through the war and the battle of postseason, and that's kind of the mode we've been in the last couple of weeks. So he hasn't had the opportunity to play, but he's certainly been a great addition. He's added great depth, and he still may have an opportunity to play in the postseason. You
achieved a personal milestone earlier this season. Can you reflect on earning your 400th career coaching win?
Yeah, it just comes with time, I think, and certainly we've had a great deal of success, and that success goes way beyond myself as a coach. And we've had tremendous student athletes. I've had assistant coaches that have worked real hard to make us successful, and support from the administration, from the athletic director, the president, to the trustees, all plays into anyone's success. So I just really, really feel fortunate to be a part of it over that period of time, and we've achieved that level of success. And probably as I get older, that reflection and that milestone will probably have greater depth of meaning. But right now, it was one of those things that came along with being around for 21 years.
What's the process of adding former players as assistant coaches to your bench? Most recently, of course, was Corey Wood, who just graduated this past year. What's that process like, and how do people like that transition from player to coach?
Yeah, well, it's hard to find guys that want to work with me, so I have to take the ones that have played for me now. In all seriousness, it's really nice to add that player that just graduated to the staff, because it allows a connection between the coaching staff and the players, and gives us a little insight on, what we think the perspective might be. And if you look at our coaching staff, there's a generational gap there between us and them, and I think that's something to really have an understanding of. And so that's where that former player, particularly one that just graduated as part of your staff, Corey, is a very high basketball IQ, great energy. So, he was a natural transition for us with his leadership that he provided the year before coming onto the staff, and it's been a pleasure to have him.
How can he personally play a role on a player like Dave Diaz, who's a point guard as well? Like, how do you think Corey can help Dave Diaz grow?
Well, I think his understanding, and be able to comfort him and say, look, you're trying to do too much, or you need to do this. And Corey's balance and compassion for people, student athletes respond well to him. So he's been a great benefit to Aaron and Trey as well, 2 veterans that are with us, and Raheem, and that connection just of understanding, look, I was just here. This is what we need to do. And I think he's done a tremendous job throughout the year.
Trayvon Butler obviously grew a lot, playing a lot more as a sophomore last year, and he just continues to grow every day. Can you just talk a little bit about Trayvon and his role on the team?
Trey continues to get better every day, and we've utilized his versatility this year even more, particularly without a great post presence of size. So we've used him down in that area, and be able to go inside and out with him offensively is a real luxury for us, and I think it's something that's provided us to be successful offensively. We still need to be better on the defensive end of the floor, but again, Trey's development and growth on and off the court with his basketball skills and leadership is a big reason why we're 19-6 and heading into a good situation.
One player who does have some size but is really more of a perimeter player by nature is Jacob Moore. Obviously, he got hurt last year and had to miss the rest of the season. He was able to come back. What did he mean coming back to this team, providing some experience and things like that?
Well, I think you said it right there. Experience was a big part of what he provided. As a fifth-year senior, and particularly someone that lost a year because of an injury, you really value that year that you get back and have an understanding like, I lost this and now I have a chance to come back. So I think it's taken him a while to find his rhythm coming off that injury, but certainly in the last month and a half of the year, he's played tremendously. Particularly the defensive end of the floor. I think it's doesn't show up on the stat sheet, but his ability to defend the post for us and oftentimes being undersized has provided us some good play down there. And now that his shot's going in with some more consistency, we're really able to spread the floor that much more. So really proud of the year Jacob's having and the things he's done on both ends of the floor.
Really unfortunate story at the beginning of the year. Jason Burgo was told that he has to stop playing basketball because of an enlarged heart. What was that like dealing with losing a player like that who he worked so hard to earn his opportunity, and then he's told he can't play anymore? What's that like?
Well, Jason's shown great patience in his career, playing behind a bunch of upperclassmen, first with Mark Zaharchuk and then Brooks Spalding and Dan Fleming, and this was supposed to be his year. And, unfortunately, the tough part is that's life. We never know when something like that's going to strike any of us or part of our family. And the thing that we look at is that we're glad it got diagnosed. Think of the other way around, what could have been and how we would have all felt. And this is a game. This is basketball. We got to keep that in perspective. And so at the end of the day, he's going to be healthy. He's going to know that that's part of his life, and he'll have to make some life adjustments. And if the worst case scenario that he missed a year of basketball is probably going to be okay in the long run.
Well, thank you for joining me this morning, Coach. We're going to take a quick break, but coming up after the break, I'll be joined by Women's Head Coach Kissy Walker. Stay tuned.
Well, this is Broadcast Central for the Maine High School basketball tournaments on MPBN. Here are where all the feeds come from. They come from Bangor, they come from Augusta, they come from Portland. We coordinate all the feeds, figuring out when the games start, if a game has to toss to another game. We also do all the recordings and the video on demand, the DVDs. We keep track of all the social media here. So even though there's a lot of action down at the courts, there's a lot of action right here as well.
The relationship between NESCom and MPBN has brought many great opportunities to the people in Maine, and basketball is just one example of that. We truly value the relationship that we have with NESCom, and actually we have quite a few NESCom students that we've brought onto staff from our partnerships.
MPBN and the New England School of Communications, a great partnership for the viewers of high school basketball in Maine.
There were once 3 brothers who were traveling along a lonely, winding road.
Welcome back. My next guest is Head Coach Kissy Walker of the women's basketball team. Coach, thanks for joining me this morning.
Pleasure.
Congratulations on finishing second in the North Atlantic Conference this season. Can you reflect on how the season played out?
Yeah, I think we started off the season playing some tough non-conference opponents. We've played the USM and had a great win over them. We took the team to Florida for a nice warm winter trip and had a great win out there over a very athletic team called Warner Southern. Beat Castleton on their home floor about 3 weeks ago, and they're currently #1, as you know. And so we've had a little more consistency this year compared to last year with a lot of the same returning players. And 13. I mean, we've got 3 losses in conference, but the fact that we've beat everybody at one point in time, we feel pretty good about things going into playoffs.
The team was very successful, despite only having 2 seniors and 1 junior. What's the challenges in coaching a younger team like the one that you have?
I love coaching a younger team because there's a lot more room for improvement. Sometimes when you have a more veteran team, they're almost at their peak in terms of their skill level and how much better they're going to get. So when you have a young team, you tend to see a lot of improvement throughout the year. And each and every day is a challenge, and it's great to see them sort of grow. You know, you tend to see maybe a game that you would have lost last season, you come out on top, you know, this season when you play that same team again in a close ball game.
One of the senior leaders on the team is Stephanie Comstock. She scored her 1,000th point a couple weeks ago. Can you talk about what she means to your team?
Yeah, you know, Steph, fifth-year senior, was out with an injury last year, came back this year, and you know, it's just real important to her. It's real meaningful, you know, to be back and healthy and playing. And I know she'd like nothing more than a championship and score the 1,000th point. When Stephanie is on top of her game and playing well, she's very, very difficult to stop. And she attracts a lot of attention because she's physical. She's got a number of post moves down now compared to where she was when she came into the program. And you know, if we can get her to finish and put that ball in the hoop and attract that attention, we're a pretty good team when she's on.
The other senior leader on the team, of course, is Samira Cruz. Can you talk about how she provides leadership for the team?
Yeah, we call her Cruz, kind of her nickname, and she's an interesting player. She's brought a different style of play coming from Florida, and she, you know, tends to get 12 points, 10 points, 15 points. She's a kind of a sharp shooter, but she's got some nice passing skills. She's done a great job down the stretch of calling out the offenses every trip down. We've talked about not coming down and sort of, as we would say, one and done, shooting up the first shot. And so I think that's been a real nice key down the stretch of her really organizing and making sure that we're running our offense.
And that, of course, leaves that one junior, which is Vicky McIntyre. What is her role going to be like going into next year, looking like maybe the only senior on the team? What's her leadership role going to be? Is it going to change from this year, do you think?
Well, we've been working with Vicky over the last couple of years, trying to get her to speak up a little bit more. You know, she's somebody who's just well-liked by everybody, and she's extremely competitive. Vicky's a tough matchup because she can shoot the three, she can go inside and post up, she can play defense, great rebounder. And so I guess the biggest thing is we just are trying to get her to be a little bit more vocal. She definitely leads by example with her work ethic and how she plays on the floor.
Leading the group of all the underclassmen that you have on your team is sophomore guard Chandler Jarrett. She's leading the team in scoring again this year after she did so last year as a freshman, which is very impressive. Could you talk about how she has grown as both a player and as a person?
Yeah, I think, you know, kind of the biggest thing is Chandler had been extremely homesick last year, and I think she's, you know, settled in a bit to the college life. I think it's been a bit of a tougher year on the floor for her because everybody knows about her. We've seen teams play a zone this year, which we really haven't seen in the past because they're trying to figure out how they're going to stop her penetration. So, you know, there's a lot of focus on Chandler. But she's a team player, and you know, she can distribute the ball, but yet if she's open, you know, she'll take it. And certainly she's a key to where we're going to end up down the stretch.
Who are some of the unsung heroes of the team, some of the players that maybe some people don't know much about?
Well, it's interesting because I feel that we're one of the teams in the league, you know, the New England College, Colby Sawyer, Castleton, the teams that are sort of vying for that championship, a lot of them have two pretty, what I'd say, stud players. And I feel that we have more than that. You know, as you mentioned, Chandler and Vicky and Samira and Steph. And we have, you know, Katie Brochu, who's 6'2", and, you know, can block 3 shots in a game and can on any given night put up 8 to 15 and get double figures in rebounding. And then we have Danae Johnson, who's a little guard who's not necessarily a shooter, but she can penetrate. She can, if you need to bring the ball up the floor, you can get it up the floor with her. And, you know, she can play some really tight defense. And then we have 2 freshman twins from the Comus, Kelsey and Kylie Richards, and they both bring a different style of play. Kelsey's more of a shooter. Kylie has been a great defensive player for us as a freshman, getting the call on some of our tougher opponents. And so, you know, we have Miranda Drinkwater, who can come off the bench and occasionally hit a 3, make some great dishes and passes to people, and do a lot of talk on defense. So, you know, we feel that we have more than just 2 players that can do well for us.
You talked about the Richards twins. Fortunately, they don't look too much alike because they're nice enough to change their hair color. But what's that dynamic like coaching, you know, not just sisters, but twin sisters?
Well, fortunately, I had the experience back a number of years ago, 2 twins from the same hometown, Nokomis as well, Ashley and Alyssa Bragdon. And my first experience with twins, I tried splitting them up all the time. And no matter what happened, they always would try to go back to working the drills together. So with these two, you know, I let them just kind of roll with it, and they can be partners in drills. And you know, they're 2 great people who are very unselfish, and they've been a really nice addition. They're playing better than I had anticipated that they would play.
One player that figures to play a pretty big role next year is Taylor Blood, because Katie Brochu and Stephanie Comstock will be graduating. So what's Taylor's role going to be like going into the future?
Well, as a staff, we've talked all along about how we needed Taylor to get to the point where she's at starting to play right now. You know, she started off the season pretty slow for what we were expecting of her. And, you know, she's had a couple of injuries that didn't necessarily keep her out of a game, but they kind of hampered her. She had a great weekend 2 weekends ago, started picking things up again this weekend. And she's a deadly shot from about 6 to 8 feet out. And she makes other people on the floor look better. She can dish to them. She faces up when she's playing in the post, and we're just trying to get her to be stronger physically.
What's it like having your nephew as an assistant coach?
Well, I love it. You know, having Matt helping me out. Of course, he played post here for Husson, and so we look to him just to strictly pretty much work with post players. And then I've got my other nephew, Alex, who's a senior here, who Alex helps out a lot with doing an efficiency rating for the players, with some statistics, and you know, he's one that is pretty available to show up at practices, and he loves reading what the other teams are doing and what their stats are. So I'm pretty lucky to have both of them with me.
We all know about your on-court coaching duties, but you also do so many other things for Husson University. Can you just talk about some of your other roles for this school?
Yeah, I'm the Director of Wellness here at Husson University. We have a wellness program for faculty, staff, students, and so I enjoy that job because anytime you can have a conversation with somebody about how they're making a little change to become healthy is pretty exciting, really, and motivating. I also do a little bit of human resources work, since wellness reports to human resources. And then I teach a class through the sports management program and the business program, sports psychology, and that's kind of right up my alley where it relates to coaching a lot.
All right, moving back on the court, how do you think your team will look? Like, how different do you think it'll look next year with some of the players that you know you're going to be losing?
It's a little early to say. We're really trying hard to bring in some more post players. We think we have a transfer that could come in and help us out. But you know, we may just have to be a little bit guard heavy. If we do get a couple of post kids that we're hoping that we will, you know, just be a little more inexperienced. And but you got to keep plugging away. Recruiting is difficult. You know, everybody's out there shooting and gunning for the same kids. And of course, last week was tournament week, so we got to see a lot. There's a lot of young juniors that we're trying to go after in the post. And but most coaches at Division III are in the same boat, all looking for big post players.
If, for example, you can't find any of those post players that you're looking for, and you do have to be guard heavy, like you mentioned, how does that change the style of play or anything like that?
We'd probably go more, you know, to an up-tempo game of running some different presses. We haven't done a whole lot of that this year. I think we'd have the quickness that we could do that if we need to. I think, you know, we could always run some offenses with 5 people out, with setting a lot of screens, a lot of pick and rolls, and a lot of penetration, dribble drive. And, you know, sometimes when you're smaller, I think on the rebounding edge, even though you're smaller, sometimes you're quicker and you can react quicker to the rebounds. So, you know, it wouldn't worry me too awfully much.
You did have a little bit of a small lineup in at times this past weekend against Thomas. Miranda Drinkwater looked like, to me, playing the power forward position. Can you just talk about her versatility, learning a position that she probably wasn't familiar with in a situation like that?
Yeah, I mean, Miranda, coming out of high school, played a lot of the point guard, actually, and guard, but she's a tough-nosed girl. She's pretty strong physically, and Miranda does a great job of talking on defense, and it's very difficult to get girls to talk on defense. So especially if we're in a 2-3 zone, she does a terrific job playing down low as a small forward. Miranda's a great team player, and she's just going to do anything to help the team out.
You mentioned before about how you're also the Director of Wellness here at Husson. As you are obviously familiar with, Husson instituted a new policy for being smoke-free. Can you just talk about the role that you played in making that happen?
Yeah, we kind of had a committee together, and we just looked at, what we talked to other schools and how they went about it and what was the best route to go. And first kind of step was getting the message out and trying to market it and letting everybody know that this was coming down the pike. So we gave about close to a 15-month notice that it would be happening this September. We've got a lot of signage up over the summer. Met with different groups to try to put some smoking cessation classes that in place, which we did a few of those. And just it's something we have to keep plugging away with. And I think you see a lot of less tobacco, whether people are still doing it or not, or doing it, undercover, so to speak. But I don't think we see as much of it. But it's going to take time. It's just going to be a cultural change.
How do you think students react to a cultural change like this?
I think, it was actually student-driven through the student government that brought it forth. But even so, I think there's been resistance. I think, that is a tough change for people. And I think 5 years from now, it won't be probably such a big deal. But, you got to feel for those people that truly are addicted to tobacco, and that it isn't an easy, thing for them to just stop doing. And so we've tried to put some different programs in place to help people leading up to the whole September 1 going smoke-free, tobacco-free.
Well, Coach, thank you for joining me this morning.
Thank you.
We're going to take a short break, but coming up, we'll have your Husson Athletes of the Week. Stay tuned.
Well, this is Broadcast Central for the Maine High School basketball tournaments on MPBN. Here are where all the feeds come from. They come from Bangor, they come from Augusta, they come from Portland. We coordinate all the feeds, figuring out when the games start, if a game has to toss to another game. We also do all the recordings and the video on demand, the DVDs. We keep track of all the social media here. So even though there's a lot of action down at the courts, there's a lot of action right here as well.
The relationship between NESCom and MPBN has brought many great opportunities to the people in Maine, and basketball is just one example of that. We truly value the relationship that we have with NESCom, and actually we have quite a few NESCom students that we've brought onto staff from our partnerships.
MPBN and the New England School of Communications, a great partnership for the viewers of high school basketball in Maine.
Welcome back. We are pleased to congratulate the Husson Athletes of the Week, Victoria McIntyre of the Husson women's basketball team, and Tim Smith of the men's swimming and diving team. Congratulations to the both of them. That's all the time we have for this edition of The Locker Room. We would like to thank our guests, Coach Kissy Walker and Warren Caruso, for coming on the show. You can follow The Locker Room on Twitter at lockerroom_TV. If you would like to see this or any other episodes, go to NESCom Journalism on YouTube. Be sure to join us Monday, March 16th for the next episode of The Locker Room. For all those working hard behind the scenes, I'm Alex Nivus. Thanks for joining us.